Hi, I'm author Melissa May Younger, and I wrote The Land in the Woods, which is a children's fantasy adventure novel. And I am working on the sequel right now, and I'm going to talk to you today about ending your story. So I have a few thoughts and tips about this. My first is that I think you should go back and reread your entire story. Okay, so go back to the beginning of your story and you're going to reread everything. Now, if you have already gone through and done some editing, you're probably pretty familiar with your story already, and you'll just need to skim. And what you're looking for is any loose ends that need to be tied up. You need to remember what you promised to your reader at the beginning of the story, or at any point during the story. So what I've done is I went back through each chapter and I just kind of skimmed through it and I said, okay, yeah, I remember what happens here. And so in chapter 1, for example, there are some conflicts. There's conflicts between the siblings. There's conflicts with the parents. The parents don't know what to do with the children. So what I did was I just copied and pasted those. Okay, so they get their mission in chapter 4. Okay, so there wasn't a lot in chapter 2 and 3 that had loose ends that I needed to wrap up. But then when I got to chapter 4, this is where they get their mission from Prince, which is going to drive most of the plot of the story. And it's very important that they complete that mission. So I can't forget about that. I can't get off track with other kinds of adventures. And I have to remember the particularities of that too, because their journey, there's a clue that they're given that their journey is supposed to be 2 days east, 1 day north, 1 east, and then 1 west. So I need to make sure that the timeline of the story approximates that. So I introduced the element that that the scroll has this power. Its words are more powerful than any spell seen before in the land. It was written in a time before magic and is said to be able to control or destroy the magic of others. All right, that's a big promise. That scroll needs to do something along those lines by the end of the story, or else I am not fulfilling my promise to my readers. In chapter 8, I introduced a knight character. Now, this knight character has a backstory. We're not really given that full backstory. All that Janine, the oldest, knows about him is that his family has been taken by the darkness and that he's trying to reach the king in hopes that the king will help him with his family and help save his village from the darkness. That needs to be resolved. Something needs to happen there. So I can't forget about that at the end. And so anyways, you get the idea. I went through chapter by chapter. Not every chapter is going to have stuff that needs to be tied up by the end, but you have to recognize when you're setting something up, even if you didn't mean to set something up. And often you might forget that you set something up. And what I've done on occasion is take out something that I set up because I discovered I'm really not going to go that direction. It's not going to make sense with the rest of the story. So I take out a promise to a reader early on so that I make sure that everything is nicely resolved at the end. So that's your first step. You really need to understand everything that you get inside your reader's head, not just what you want your story to be, but what a reader is going to want, like what's going to keep them reading, what's going to keep them curious, what are they going to want to see at the end in actuality. So let's talk about genre for a second here. If you have a mystery, if you're writing a mystery, your mystery needs to be solved by then, plain and simple. If you're writing a fantasy, then if there's some kind of quest or adventure that was supposed to happen, it needs to have happened. Now, if you look at something like The Lord of the Rings, it doesn't happen in the first book, but they make progress towards that goal. And there's hope at the end that they're still going to move forward to that goal. They're still on that quest, right? And you have to he wraps up certain things, right? So you're not going to wrap up everything if you're writing like a trilogy or a series. You might leave a few loose ends, but you'll need to remember to include those in the next book or the one after that, and make sure that your reader knows that you haven't forgotten about those, because they're going to get probably a little annoyed. Now, if it's more of a drama, a relational piece, or if it's more of a romance, then you need to make sure that the relational aspects are fleshed out and resolved in a way that makes your reader feel good about it. Any conflicts that the characters had need to be mostly resolved, or if you're maybe acknowledge something that is not being resolved, maybe like get inside a character's head and they're like, there's no way I can resolve this. I have to let it go, or something like that. And it's more about them letting it go and having this cathartic moment or something like that. Now, if there are villains in your story, then they need to get their comeuppance or maybe get redemption. So make sure that something happens with your villains by the end. Okay, there should not be like this. They show up, they cause chaos, and the hero gets away and saves the day, and nothing happens to the villain. Your reader's probably going to want something to happen to them. And especially if you're writing fantasy like I am, then you are going to want there to be this obvious good and evil dichotomy, and evil should be either punished or redeemed in some way. Okay. And character development. You want to make sure that your characters, especially your main ones, have developed throughout the story. And at the end, a good test is to see, is the character that you're writing about now at the end in some way different from the one at the beginning? How are you showing that? Make it obvious to your reader that this character they didn't go through all of that just to be exactly the same at the end. So you'll want to think about that nice character arc, which I'll talk about in another video. So anyways, I hope that this advice is helpful to you in your writing journey, and I wish you luck in your writing. Please let me know in the comments if there's any topic that you want me to cover, and I will be happy to do so.